What if the freedoms you enjoy today quietly disappeared by 2026? Imagine a world where your private messages are monitored, your right to protest is silenced, and even paying with cash becomes nearly impossible. These aren't distant fears, they are real changes already happening across the UK. From stricter surveillance to shrinking labour rights, everyday liberties are being chipped away, piece by piece. Stay with me, because in this video, you'll discover the 10 freedoms UK citizens could lose by 2026, and some of them will affect your daily life more than you think. Number 1. Online privacy. Online privacy is one of the most fragile freedoms facing UK citizens today. With the passing of the Online Safety Act, the government has gained sweeping powers to regulate digital platforms. On the surface, this is framed as protection, especially for children. But beneath the promises lies a system of constant monitoring. Platforms are pushed to filter, remove, or flag content deemed harmful, even if it isn't illegal. Encrypted messaging services are under pressure to weaken security, which means private conversations may no longer stay private. The once clear boundary between personal life and government oversight is blurring faster than ever. The consequences reach beyond policies and into daily life. Popular services such as WhatsApp and Signal have already warned they may withdraw from the UK rather than compromise encryption standards. For ordinary people, this could mean losing access to trusted apps or being forced into systems that expose personal data. Imagine a world where your casual jokes, private chats, or even a photo shared with friends could be analyzed, flagged, or stored indefinitely. Suddenly, speaking freely online begins to feel like stepping onto a stage where someone is always watching. By 2026, the erosion of digital privacy could become the new normal. Privacy is not simply about secrecy, it is about autonomy, dignity, and the ability to express yourself without fear. When individuals know their conversations might be monitored, self-censorship grows, and authentic dialogue shrinks. The UK risks moving into an era where online communication is never truly secure, leaving citizens with little more than the memory of what digital freedom once felt like. The freedom to connect openly, share ideas, and communicate safely may no longer exist as it once did. Number 2. Protest rights. The right to protest has always been a cornerstone of democracy, giving people the power to challenge injustice and hold leaders accountable. In the UK, however, this freedom is under serious threat. Laws like the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Act have expanded police powers to restrict demonstrations based on noise, disruption, or duration. What once allowed citizens to gather and voice their concerns is now subject to tight control. By 2026, the very act of protesting could feel less like a democratic right and more like a privilege granted only under strict conditions. We can already see these changes unfolding. Climate activists, social justice groups, and unions have faced increasingly heavy-handed policing, including arrests and fines for peaceful demonstrations. Imagine turning up at a march with friends only to be warned that raising your voice too loudly could be considered unlawful. Protests that once shaped national debates are now more likely to be curtailed before they gain momentum. Instead of being a vibrant display of collective power, demonstrations risk becoming carefully managed performances, stripped of their true impact. The danger of these restrictions is not just about protests themselves, but about the future of progress. Every major social reform in British history, whether women's suffrage, workers' rights, or civil liberties, was won because people gathered, disrupted, and demanded change. If that freedom weakens, so too does the possibility of new movements shaping tomorrow. By 2026, protest in the UK may carry so many barriers that it loses its meaning, and when the right to assemble fades, democracy itself begins to weaken, leaving society quieter, less responsive, and more vulnerable to unchecked authority. Number 3. Freedom of expression online. The internet was once celebrated as the ultimate space for free expression, where anyone could share ideas, challenge authority, and build communities. Yet in the UK, that space is tightening under the weight of the Online Safety Act. Platforms are now required to remove content judged harmful, even if it isn't illegal. At first, this may sound like protection, but the vague definition of harmful leaves too much open to interpretation. Posts critical of government policy, controversial opinions, or even satire could be flagged and erased. What looks like safety measures can easily slide into censorship. For creators and everyday users, the chilling effect is already clear. Algorithms and moderators, often flawed, struggle to distinguish between harmful content and sharp criticism. A blog, video, or social post can vanish overnight because it triggered automated filters. As people grow wary of penalties or bans, self-censorship creeps in. Instead of freely debating tough issues, many avoid sensitive topics altogether. Imagine scrolling through social media, where bold voices are missing, not because they had nothing to say, but because saying it carried too much risk. The digital public square begins to feel quieter, safer on the surface, yet dangerously empty of real discussion. By 2026, the UK could face an online culture shaped more by fear than by dialogue. Freedom of expression is not about agreeing with every opinion, it's about protecting the right to disagree. When that right shrinks, diversity of thought fades, leaving behind echo chambers of safe, approved ideas. A society without robust expression risks losing innovation, creativity, and accountability. The freedom to speak your mind, share your story, and question authority online is not just a privilege, it is a vital pillar of democracy. If it falls, much else falls with it. Number 4. Cash payments. Cash has always been one of the simplest and most reliable ways to exchange value, giving people direct control over their money. Yet, in the UK, the steady push toward a cashless society is accelerating, and by 2026, using physical notes and coins may become far more difficult. Banks are closing branches, ATMs are disappearing, and businesses increasingly adopt card-only policies. While digital payments are convenient, they come at a cost, the loss of financial independence. When cash disappears, so too does the ability to operate outside systems that track, monitor, and sometimes even restrict spending. The groups most affected by this shift are often the most vulnerable. Older citizens, who may not be comfortable with apps and online banking, risk exclusion. Rural communities with weak internet coverage face barriers to everyday transactions. For many, cash also provides a way to budget or to keep purchases private, freedoms that vanish when every transaction leaves a digital footprint. Imagine wanting to give a discreet donation, buy essentials during a system outage, or simply avoid overspending, only to find you no longer have that choice. The freedom to manage money on your own terms shrinks with each card-only policy. By 2026, a fully cashless society could have consequences far deeper than inconvenience. Every purchase would feed into a database, mapping spending habits, preferences, and routines. Technical failures, cyber attacks, or even policy changes could freeze access to funds in ways cash never could. What might seem like progress could end up eroding resilience and privacy. The freedom to hold, save, and spend physical money has always been a safeguard against control. Without it, financial life becomes less about choice and more about compliance, leaving citizens with less independence than ever before. Number 5. Privacy in public spaces. The idea that you can walk through a city anonymously is disappearing fast in the UK. With one of the world's most extensive CCTV networks and the increasing use of facial recognition technology, public spaces are turning into zones of constant surveillance. London alone is often described as one of the most monitored cities on Earth, and by 2026, this trend is set to expand nationwide. Every trip to a shop, every bus ride, every visit to a stadium could leave behind a digital record of where you've been and who you were with. The freedom to blend into a crowd is fading. Facial recognition systems are particularly controversial. Supporters claim they help prevent crime, but critics warn of serious risks, wrongful identification, bias against minority communities, and the potential for widespread misuse. Errors already lead to unjust stops and searches, undermining trust between the public and the authorities. Beyond mistakes, the technology normalizes constant oversight. It doesn't just track criminals, it tracks everyone. Imagine walking to meet a friend, knowing your face is being scanned, logged, and stored without your consent. The comfort of moving freely through public space turns into the unease of being constantly watched. By 2026, surveillance could extend into almost every aspect of daily life, mapping personal routines and social networks with chilling precision. Attending a protest, visiting a medical clinic, or even simply commuting may generate records that follow you indefinitely. Privacy in public is not about hiding wrongdoing, it is about preserving dignity, the ability to exist without constant evaluation. Once this expectation of anonymity is gone, regaining it becomes nearly impossible. The quiet erosion of public privacy represents not just technological change, but a fundamental shift in what it means to be free in everyday life. Number 6. Right to strike. The right to strike has long been one of the most powerful tools for workers, giving them a collective voice to demand fair pay, safe conditions, and respect. In the UK, however, this right is being steadily weakened. New laws now require minimum service levels in essential sectors such as transport, healthcare, and education. On the surface, this appears to protect the public from disruption, but in reality, it undermines the very purpose of striking. If workers are legally required to keep services running, their ability to apply pressure on employers is severely reduced. For those on the front line, nurses, teachers, rail staff, the impact is direct. Strikes are not taken lightly. They are often the last resort after negotiations fail. By forcing staff to continue working during industrial action, the government strips workers of their leverage, leaving disputes unresolved and morale broken. Imagine standing shoulder to shoulder with colleagues demanding fair pay, only to be told that you must still work, effectively turning the strike into a hollow gesture. The symbolism remains, but the power is gone. By 2026, the danger is a workforce that feels increasingly powerless. Strikes are not only about disruption, they are about visibility, unity, and demanding change when other routes have failed. Weakening this right risks entrenching inequality, where corporations and policymakers hold the upper hand while workers' voices fade. A society where strikes are toothless is one where exploitation thrives unchecked. The right to withdraw labor has always been a cornerstone of progress. If that freedom disappears, workers lose more than a tactic, they lose their ability to shape fairer futures for themselves and generations to come. Number 7. Asylum and refugee protections. Seeking asylum has always been recognized as a basic human right, giving protection to people fleeing war, persecution, or disaster. Yet, in the UK, that right is being reshaped under policies like the Illegal Migration Act. These measures place severe restrictions on how and when individuals can claim asylum. Anyone arriving through so-called irregular routes, such as crossing the Channel, may be automatically disqualified. By 2026, thousands of desperate people could be denied the chance to present their case, effectively closing a door that has stood open for decades. The human cost of these policies is immense. Families torn apart by conflict, individuals escaping oppressive regimes, and children searching for safety all risk being sent back or deported to third countries. Critics argue this approach undermines the UK's obligations under international law, including the 1951 Refugee Convention. Instead of offering sanctuary, the system now prioritizes deterrence, portraying vulnerable people as problems to be managed rather than lives to be protected. Imagine facing unimaginable danger, only to reach the UK and be told you are unwelcome simply because of the way you arrived. By 2026, asylum in the UK may no longer resemble a humanitarian commitment, but a political strategy. This shift does more than strip away legal protections, it erodes empathy itself. A nation that closes its doors to those in need sends a message that safety is conditional, compassion is negotiable, and dignity is expendable. The freedom to seek refuge is not just about borders, it is about recognizing our shared humanity. If that freedom disappears, the UK risks losing more than its reputation, it risks losing part of its moral foundation. Number 8. Renting and housing choices. The freedom to choose where and how to live is shrinking for many people in the UK. Rising property prices and limited availability have already made home ownership a distant dream for younger generations, leaving renting as the only option for millions. Yet, even within renting, changes are emerging that could further restrict choice. Proposed housing bills and local council regulations aim to tighten control on short-term lets such as Airbnb, while landlords gain new powers to set stricter conditions. What once felt like a personal decision where to live and under what terms is increasingly dictated by market pressures and regulatory shifts. These changes affect not only renters but also communities. For tenants, the lack of affordable housing means accepting poor conditions, high rents, and limited security of tenure. Families find themselves moving frequently, uprooting children from schools and breaking social ties. In cities, short-term rentals drive up demand, leaving fewer long-term options for residents. Meanwhile, landlords who control scarce properties can dictate terms with little fear of tenants walking away. The freedom to reject unfair agreements is eroded when the alternative is homelessness or moving far from work and family. By 2026, the danger is that housing in the UK may no longer feel like a right, but a privilege reserved for those who can keep up with rising costs and diminishing supply. Renting could become less about freedom of choice and more about survival in a system tilted against ordinary people. This is not only a matter of economics, but of dignity and security. A society where citizens cannot freely choose safe, affordable homes is one where independence is compromised. The freedom to build a stable life is deeply tied to housing, and that freedom is slipping away. Number 9. Press freedom. A free press has always been one of the strongest safeguards against unchecked power, yet in the UK this freedom is under mounting pressure. Recent expansions of national security legislation give the government greater authority to limit the publication of sensitive information. Journalists investigating state activities, whistleblowers, or even corporate misconduct face rising risks of prosecution under rules that frame their work as threats to national interests. By 2026, the boundary between protecting security and suppressing scrutiny may blur so much that holding those in power accountable becomes increasingly difficult. The chilling effect of these laws is already visible. Reporters covering issues such as defense contracts, intelligence operations, or protest movements face legal challenges, surveillance, and intimidation. Media organizations that once championed bold investigations may self-censor, wary of lawsuits or government backlash. Imagine a newsroom where the question is not, is this story true, but will publishing this land us in court? That hesitation reshapes journalism itself, shifting it from a public service into a cautious exercise in risk management. For ordinary citizens, this means fewer revelations about corruption, fewer debates about policy, and less transparency in how the nation is governed. By 2026, if these trends continue, press freedom in the UK may exist more in theory than in practice. A society without strong independent journalism is one where truth is filtered through official channels, and uncomfortable realities rarely reach the public. What disappears is not just the freedom of reporters, but the public's right to know. Without fearless journalism, democracy weakens, leaving citizens less informed and less empowered. Press freedom is not a luxury. It is a vital defense for every other liberty. When it fades, so too does the light that keeps power accountable. Number 10. Travel and border freedom. Travel has long been one of the most tangible ways people experience freedom, whether through holidays abroad, visiting family, or pursuing work and study opportunities. Yet, in the UK, post-Brexit changes and tightening border policies are reshaping this liberty. By 2026, citizens may face increasing hurdles when crossing borders, including new biometric checks, longer queues, and higher travel costs. What was once a relatively simple journey to Europe may feel like navigating layers of bureaucracy. The freedom to move easily, spontaneously, and affordably is quietly slipping away. These changes extend beyond inconvenience. The loss of EU travel rights has already made studying, working, and retiring abroad more complicated for UK citizens. New entry requirements, visas, and insurance costs create barriers that disproportionately affect younger people, students, and lower-income travelers. Even short holidays may require additional documents and fees. Meanwhile, biometric systems raise fresh privacy concerns, as personal data is collected, stored, and potentially shared across borders. What was once just a passport check now involves submitting to a level of monitoring that many find intrusive. By 2026, travel may no longer feel like a right but a controlled privilege. The spontaneity of booking a last-minute trip or the ease of visiting relatives across Europe could be replaced by planning months ahead and navigating red tape. For many, this loss is more than logistical. It represents a narrowing of horizons and opportunities. The freedom to explore, to connect with other cultures, and to seek experiences beyond one's borders is central to personal growth and collective understanding. When those opportunities are limited, so too is the vision of what life can be. Travel shapes perspective, and its restriction reshapes society itself. The freedoms we've explored, privacy, protest, expression, cash use, public anonymity, labor rights, asylum, housing, press, and travel, are not just abstract principles, they are the fabric of everyday life, woven into how we speak, work, move, and live. By 2026, many of these could look unrecognizable, not through a single sweeping change, but through gradual restrictions that add up to something much bigger. That's the danger. Freedom doesn't always vanish with a bang. Often, it slips away quietly, while most people are too busy to notice. What's at stake is more than law or policy. It's about dignity, choice, and the sense of agency that comes with knowing you can shape your own future. Losing these freedoms means more than inconvenience. It reshapes society into one where control outweighs liberty, and history shows that once rights are gone, winning them back is far harder. So the real question is, how much of your freedom are you willing to trade before you say enough? Awareness is the first step, and conversation is the second, because if people don't speak up, the silence will be filled by systems that decide for them.